Hey y'all, welcome to Geeking Out, the podcast about all geeky aspects of software delivery, DevOps, observability, reliability, and everything in between. I'm your host, Adriana Villela, coming to you from Toronto, Canada. And geeking out with me today is Marylia Gutierrez of Grafana. Welcome, Marylia.
Hello.
And where are you calling from today?
I'm also from Toronto.
Yay, Toronto. Super excited. I always get so excited when there are other Canadians, other Torontonians, and we've got the bonus because you're always also Brazilian. So
both Brazilians in Toronto. Yes.
That's right, Brazilians in Toronto. Okay, so before we get started with the meaty bits, we are going to start with the lightning round questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. First question: are you a lefty or a righty?
Ready.
Do you prefer iPhone or Android?
Android, all the way.
Do you prefer Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Probably Mac is what I've been using for several years for development. It would be hard to move away from it.
Yeah, fair enough. What is your favorite programming language?
So I'm kind of split between. I really like JavaScript. I think I work a lot with this, but after working with Go, I also really enjoy it. So it's good that I also like being full stack. So everything backend, I try to focus on Go. Anything front end, I use JavaScript. So it's a little split there.
That's awesome. Best of both
Yeah.
worlds then. Okay, next question. Do you prefer dev or ops?
Dev. Yeah.
All right, cool. JSON or YAML?
I think let's say JSON, just because I actually never work as much with YAML. So it's just not so common on my
Fair enough.
case. So it's the most familiar, pretty much.
Yeah. And I guess because you also work with a lot of JavaScript.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's pretty much JSON. So
totally. Okay, next question. Do you prefer spaces or tabs?
I think spaces. And you have the tabs that actually convert to spaces kind of thing. So you don't.
Yep. I'm the same way. Okay, two more questions. Do you prefer to consume content through video or text?
Text. Yeah. Otherwise, I get too distracted, and or I have to change the speed sometimes to go faster. Like, where is that thing that I just wanted to remind myself? There is no way to just search on the video that particular.
I know. I actually I caught myself last week listening to a podcast, and I think I had to rewind it 5 times because my mind started wandering while I was listening to it. And yeah, I agree. I wish there was a search functionality in videos or podcasts or conversations in general where I'll be having a conversation with someone, I'll zone out. I'm like, oh shit, where's the rewind button?
Or I talk with that person. Who was that person? Or when do I talk about it? Command F on the brain.
Yeah, I know, that drives me crazy. Okay, final question. What is your superpower?
Ooh. So I think for this one, gonna stick with context switching, just because again, there's back-end and front-end switching, or just day-to-day tasks. I have to do this and I have to go to a meeting, and then I can easily switch back and forth between things and pick up whatever is next.
That is a good superpower. I definitely agree.
Yeah. Especially because of the time that I was a manager previously, I had sometimes the meeting would end early. I have a couple of minutes to the next one. I would go in and program a little, do some coding, and come back in just those 5 minutes. So there's always something.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember when I was a manager as well, trying to when I was doing some tech stuff on the side, I'm like, do I have time between meetings, or please let people be late so I can tinker on this a little bit more. Awesome. All right, you survived the lightning round questions. Okay. So I want to point out to our audience that Marylia has actually I have interviewed Marylia previously before on Call Me Maybe, and so I invited her to come on Geeking Out because it's always a treat chatting with Marylia. And last time, like when you were on Call Me Maybe, we talked about how you were a manager at your previous job, and but you still made it a point of staying technical. And so and which is it's funny because like the kind of management techie, like management IC switch has come up as a theme many
Mm.
times throughout this particular podcast. So it's always interesting to see where people are at, where people land with their careers. And you just switched jobs, I guess, relatively recently, right?
Yes.
Where you were primarily in management, still staying technical, but now you're like, I guess, fully
Yes,
IC.
yeah. So yeah, the previous job was pretty much doing like the main position was a manager, but I was still doing a lot of development, still being like one of the top contributors. But now I moved completely IC role. So and I also have like a small team, so we can divide things between us. So yeah, completely IC now.
That's awesome. And tell folks where you're working
Now I'm
now.
working on Grafana, focus on
Yeah.
OpenTelemetry.
Yeah, and that was another reason why I wanted to have you on, is because you are focusing on open telemetry, and I believe, and when you were at your previous job, you were managing an observability team, right?
Correct. So yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, on the previous job, I was working for Cockroach Labs, and I was responsible for the observability of the cluster. So already on this world of observability and deciding what it was best for the user, like what information would be helpful for them to debug anything, and also just know the current state of their databases, everything that they were running from queries and things like that. So I really enjoy working on the observability world. So definitely when made the switch, I wanted to continue on this observability. And
That's
now I
awesome.
can focus, now it's just pretty much on open telemetry. So we can be, it's not just for databases now, it's for everything. Yeah.
So I guess you went from being like an end user of observability to now like actually being a
Yeah.
contributor in uh, in open telemetry, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And it's good because I also have like the experience of, because I interacted a lot with what user would were looking for and things like that, is also helpful. For example, I'm joining the SIG for semantic conventions for databases. Now I can actually give the opinion of like, oh, this type of information was always helpful. These were things that people are always asking and things like that. So whenever we make like a convention, I can give like the point of view of also what people were looking for.
Yeah, that's so great. And one thing that I want to ask you with regards to like, becoming a contributor in open telemetry, like how was that for you? How was your experience? Like what, I guess first part of my question is, had you ever contributed in open source before, like in an open source community like open telemetry before?
Yeah, so well, in theory, like Cockroach DB is open source, so everything
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
do there can people can contribute. But it was hard for people to interact with the area that my team was on, because it was not something so easy for people like to jumping into stuff, especially because some of the testing and stuff were things that it was easy for internal people to test, not as much the community. So even though it was in the open, was not as much of interaction at that point. So that was a first interacting, like having the group, and I have people from Lightstaff, I have people from Dynatrace, Honeycomb. So I think that was definitely a switch there that I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
receptive because they want to improve the
Yeah.
community and things like that. So it has been really great.
That's awesome. And I'm it's so nice to hear like you've had such a positive experience, because I always tell people, like, whenever, I'm trying to convince people to contribute to OpenTelemetry, I'm like, everyone's really nice. No one's going to bite your head off. Like, you're okay. Because it's scary, right? Making that first pull request. You're like, should I?
Yeah, so I think it's also like, for example, different if it is someone that never contributed, never done something, it's going to be a lot more scary, like your first PR, your first interaction, and then like joining a meeting and like, oh, should I give my opinion? Of course it's always going to be scary.
Yeah.
But for me, because I had the experience of all the things that I was doing was already in the open, so you have like, when you create things, try always to be clear, put a lot of description like on your PRs or like testing. And when you talking with somebody, if you have a question, give the context and then ask the question. So for example, I joined my first like SIG. I asked a couple of questions, was kind of like, okay. My second one, I was making some comments on one of the plugins for Postgres. And I ended up, they even asked me to be the code owner for that package.
Oh,
So
nice.
on my second meeting, I became the code owner of something. So, but of course, it's not going to be the same for everybody, because it's not like 2 weeks you're going to be a code owner. Actually,
Yeah.
I was working for the past 3 years in databases, and that gave me the context to like, oh, we can make this thing better or change this or that. So it's going to be different for each one. And then one of them actually offered to sponsor me to become a member, so I became a member, and then he's just on track for all the other things wherever they come.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And one of the things that I so appreciate about this community is like everybody actually makes a really concerted effort to make it vendor neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're all like, frenemies, right? We work for competitors, but it's like you don't even notice it. Like
Yeah.
most of like I never think about the fact that like when I'm interacting with people in OTel, like yeah, we're competitors.
No,
Like
no, yeah, it's very funny because like internally sometimes you think about, oh, we have to do this. Wait, are the others doing this? And like, oh my god, no, we have to like get this customer, because that is the goal, right? Getting the
yeah,
customer as
yeah.
a company, you need to have revenue. But then I am those videos. They're like, oh, we're doing this. I'm like, okay, cool. We can do this then.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
so fun, like to have this other points of views and things like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. So was your first SIG that you joined, was it the semantic convention SIG?
No, it was the SDK for Node.
Oh,
So my
okay.
team is focused on SDKs, and we kind of like divide a little the languages between the team, but we also switch a little just because I
Yeah.
recently joined it. So now I'm focused on the Node.js SDK. But
Yeah.
with time, probably gonna touch on all the others as well. So that is the one that I've been more actively joining. So that is the one that I became co-owner of the Postgres plugin inside the SDK.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. So, what are for folks who might not be in the know on like what's kind of the day in the life of like working on the SDK on the Node SDK? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so for example, I think one advantage that I have on my team is that the other members are working on, for example, the Java and .NET, and those are really stable SDKs. So I know the things that already exist there that are working, and then a lot of things are still experimental on the Node one.
Mhm.
So we need to, or they're just don't exist at all. So one kind of like first step is to make alignment. So I can create things like, for example, we wanted to have information about the host ID and service instance ID. So we can use this even on like Grafana dashboards. And then we were checking, and then each language were doing slightly different, or some of them were actually missing some cases. So my first thing was actually making sure that the host ID was always getting collected, and then the service instance ID was not being generated unless you force it. So again, I created like the default to have like a random ID. So is things like right now to make it consistent between. Then the other thing that I'm working on right now is, for example, there's a lot of metrics. We have, for example, semantic convention for the Java metrics, but that is the only language that have semantic convention. There is not for the others, but there are things that are very helpful specific for Node, between like, oh, just memory usage, or like specific like for the node garbage collector, things like that. But there is nothing currently collecting any of those things. So that's why I'm working on, for example, working on creating like the semantic convention. Then if people agree, like, okay, these are the good ones that we should be collecting, then I can go back to the SDK and actually put up the PRs to make those things. And actually,
Nice.
just the other day, somebody opened, when starting collecting some of those metrics that you were missing. I was like, okay, cool. So I can kind of like already work with someone else that is also working on the same thing. And that is why the SIGs are important, because when I start working, I kind of ask like, oh, I'm start working on this. Just, is anyone else working on this, so we don't have any conflicts? And they're like, oh yeah, we have this information this place, but currently no one else is touching this. So I was like, okay, cool. So I'm gonna create and share with all of you so you can give me feedback. So I think that is the cool part.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. Yeah, I've had some my more recent SIG interactions outside of end user SIG are the OTel operator SIG, because I had a talk at KubeCon where we were talking about like aspects of the OTel operator. So I like posted a bunch of questions on there. And one of the things that that I notice as you start digging into things in OTel is like, oh, there's like things missing, right? So you'll want to. I always see that as an opportunity to like improve the docs, improve the README. So I remember
I
like
keep going on rabbit holes there, because, for example, for this one, I was like, I just had to add it like the service instance ID. That's it. And my first thing was like, okay, which cloud detector already had this? And then I looked the README. There was no information at all in any of the readmes about this. So I was like, okay, let me first start then updating all the readmes. So I opened like a bunch of PRs to update all the docs. And then I noticed there was a PR like, oh, some of those things were like deprecated. We should update. So I started creating PRs to update those things. And now I was like,
oh, no.
okay, it's updated. And then I was like, but now we need to touch this other thing that also doesn't have any good example or documentation. Let me create this. So I think like on my first week, I opened close to like 30 PRs.
Oh my God.
And I was like, yeah. And my goal after I got all of those merged, was like, okay, cool. Now create the PR that I actually wanted, and it was like a small one kind of thing. But yeah, every time that I'm trying to use something and I say like, oh, I don't know how to use this, I try to find out. I was like, oh, that is were the steps that I did. So I go there and update the documentation. So yeah.
Yeah, it's such a rabbit hole with the documentation. Also, because I think like some things live in the READMEs, some live in the OTel docs. And then, so it's like trying to achieve a balance because you don't want to necessarily duplicate information, but you want to make sure that one references the other.
Yeah.
Which in itself can be complicated.
But
In my case, I remember I was like asking a question like for putting together this talk, and then someone pointed out, oh yeah, like it's not super well documented. There's like a ticket open to update this, and I'm like, I can do it. it's so fresh in my mind, so I can totally update the README so that it clarifies things.
Yeah, one was funny because I was following two tutorials, one thing that I was trying, but I was following one directly from OTel, and I was trying to put some things on a Grafana dashboard. And so I was following that document as well. But both ways were right ways of doing, but there was two steps that if you did, they would conflict with each other.
Oh.
And then I was like, it was not working. Like, why is not working? Then like I got some help from somebody from the community. I was like, oh, okay, so those two ways are right, but at some point you need to check if you're doing one of the other. It was just like some node options, and I was like, maybe I should put like this as a warning on the talk, like make sure you don't have this other thing like set up. And I was talking with the person. I was like, okay, I'm gonna update then on both Grafana doc and the OTel doc. They're like, wait, how can you update Grafana? I was like, no, I work for Grafana, so I can't go there and update the website. So it's not something that. But yeah, then I was able to put the warning on both.
That's so great. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, like, because especially if you're starting out with something, it's so scary. Like, you're following the instructions. I don't know about you, but I'll be following the instructions on someone's blog post or whatever. I'm like, I must follow this exactly because I don't want this thing to blow up in my face. And then something blows up in your face, and you're like, oh my god, what's this?
And then you put like part of code of one, and then the other, and become that Frankenstein, and you're just like, okay, which part of this I actually need? And you start like commenting out until like it breaks or continue working. Like, okay, this is the thing that I actually need here.
Yeah, exactly. And then make sure you take good notes.
Yes.
Yeah, because like I often find like if I don't touch something for a really long time, I might as well not have written it. You know what I mean? It's like
I have so many notes. I have like even put like notes about like topics. Even like if something like super basic, I was like, it's super basic for me right now. In a week, I might not think it's super basic. So I put like all the commands that I run for everything. Like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise, like future you is gonna be so mad at past you. Yeah, I'm always surprised by how easily I forget things. Like when I'm doing, I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna forget this, and then a week later, I'm like, what? So I wanted to ask you as well. What how has it been? Because as I mentioned before, you had been managing a team, and then I think just before you left Cockroach, you had gone back to, I think, primarily IC. How was that? How was that transition for you?
Yeah, I think
In general,
I think on my case is easier because I never stop programming. So that was still like 50% of my time. I was still developing. So just continue picking up on this. It was easy. I guess like the challenge is more like when you change job, like the things that I need to learn. And so the challenge was more on that side, not the programming itself. And now I think I'm still trying to get used to the amount of meetings I have because, because it's like barely any. So just like, what? Wait, what do I do now? I should be talking with people. Oh no, that's not. And especially because a lot of my team is on Europe, so the meetings happen in the morning. So I have like 1 or 2 meetings a day in the morning, and then afternoon is completely like open. So
oh, that's so glorious.
So it's good because one of my teammates, he's in the US, and then he actually is my onboarding like buddy. So we kind of say, okay, we can schedule in the afternoon because we know there is not going to be any conflicts with anything. So it's good because pretty much like then the morning I have like the weeklies or like the company meeting, things like that. The 6 that I join are noon pretty much. So I have like those ones, and then heads down working afternoon.
That's awesome. I definitely appreciate having like an uninterrupted chunk of time to work. And for me too, like that, I think that was the biggest shock when I went from manager to IC. I'm like, I'm free.
I'm just joking with the, like all those recaps, like or YouTube Music or Spotify, like how many minutes you heard. I was like, oh, it's gonna spike so much. I already see the spike.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you find like aside from having a lot of coworkers in Europe, so having to do the morning meetings, how do you generally find like having working with folks in like that big of a time zone difference?
Yeah, I think it's gonna again like depends on the team. So for example, my team is very senior, so that is also like an advantage that people have the experience on know when to sync up, on what teams to need to sync up. So and even like for example, we are working on the SDKs, so each one is actually doing for their own parts. So it's not like we would interact But then when one of them finds something like, oh, I found out like in Java works this way, so they can kind of like share, so we know that it's being done the same way everywhere. So we do have like the team channel that we can share this type of thing. And then when sometimes we have questions that we think should discuss with the whole team, then we just keep putting on the agenda, and then when the weekly comes, we discuss. But I do have one-on-ones with the rest of the team as well, just to like check in and stuff like that. So I think it has been going really well. But again, the key is communication for everybody, that anyone that is listening that doesn't have the experience, just message people, ask away. They might not be able to answer at that time, but when they have the time, they will definitely help you.
And I think that's such good advice, because I think, especially for more junior people, they tend to get so scared to ask questions.
I used to like manage a lot of junior people, and some of them would only message me. I was like, you can message the team. No. You can ask. So I was always like encourage them. And when I would see them asking like on the like team channel, and sometimes because the team channel note was private, but sometimes they would ask like on the open channels, I was like, oh, I'm so proud. I would be like so happy when I was seeing things like that. I was like, oh. And then one time I asked my manager, was like, because I think one of them like they were afraid of like, oh, I'm just like concerned that I'm gonna like sound stupid with my questions, making things. I was like, how can I convince them that is not stupid? It's just nobody knows a lot of things. You just have to ask to learn. I was like, how can I convince that like people can ask questions? He's like, use you as an example. I was like, wait, what do you mean? And he was like, well, because I just that morning had asked on the engineering channel, there was like the big one, and I was like, I have this problem and I have no idea what it is. Can somebody help me? That was kind of like my question was pretty much that dog, like, have no idea what I'm doing kind of thing. So it was pretty much me on the message. And then who replied me was one of the founders who created the thing like 6 years ago. I was like, oh yeah, I did. I was like, okay, cool. So he just replied there, and like, see, if me as a manager or like a senior IC is so open, like, hey, I have no idea what is this thing. Who knows? We're not expecting anyone, even like more junior, to know those things as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's such an important thing to impart like throughout our industry, because I think and I notice, especially in like large corporations, people are very afraid of asking questions, because you're supposed to give off this impression that you know what you're doing. And it's like, there are so many points in my day where I don't know what I'm doing. I will try to solve things on my own as much as possible, because I kind of like that.
Yeah.
But like, if I'm stuck,
it's always like a balance. So I would say, for example, if you have like a task, you read, and you have absolutely no idea what the task is talking about, the first thing, ask questions to clarify. And like, okay, now at least I understand what they are asking me to do. Now try just for yourself to figure out on your own. So I would say, like, if in 1-2 days you don't make any progress, ask for help. I was like, this is like at least like some threshold for like to try it out, see if you can learn it, or at least if you're like completely stuck, you say like, can you give me like some pointer? Because at the same time, I would like with people that I was like even manage, and a lot of time I would not just say the answer, hey, do this thing on this line, because otherwise they won't learn. So you kind of like ask questions. What do you think about this thing? What about that thing? Have you tried? Kind of thing, and you can see like the light come up at some point. You're like, oh yeah, I think we can do this way. So you try to like guide them, but but I always like myself like to try a little, and then when I'm stuck, I was just messaging like somebody like this, my onboarding buddy, like yesterday. I was like, okay, I try like 4 different things and it's still not working. Do you have some time? And then I just go over say like, yeah, try this, this, and this, and then he's like, oh yeah, you just missed this thing. I was like, oh, okay.
It's like, damn it, I wish I'd asked earlier.
Yeah, I spent like 2 days on this thing. It was like one line. Okay.
And that's the thing too. I find when it comes to troubleshooting, like, I don't know about you, but like for me personally, if I'm like stuck on a problem for 2 days, and like like I need to have a sense of accomplishment, and when I'm stuck on a problem, there's no sense of accomplishment. I feel like my day is a failure. And then, and then it's like, okay, I need to like reach out to people because like I've tried everything, like this, I have to. And then, they explain the thing, and then everything that you've been doing over the last 2 days, like you're like, oh my God, it makes sense. And then it's like, oh, well, it wasn't a complete waste because look at all the things that I learned along the way.
And if you don't fix it, you keep thinking at that thing, you go to bad thing. I
Oh my
had
God.
like dreams about fixing the things. Sometimes I had a dream like, oh, this is the way. And I'm like, I need to wake up so I can actually fix it now.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like for me personally, I hate letting go, even though I know the best thing that I can do is walk away. And I keep making the same mistake over and over again. And sometimes I'm smart enough and walk away. And as you pointed out, like you're working on the problem, like it creeps into your dreams. It's because your brain is still doing the problem solving anyway. So like stepping away is going to help you so much. Yeah. So, that's the advice to anyone who is stuck troubleshooting. Walk away, no matter how hard it is. And then to your point of like, don't give away the solution so that people, like especially more junior people, have like it kind of trains their problem solving brain, right? Because if they're used to being given the answer, even though you can do it for them in 2 seconds, right? Which is so tempting. And then the other lesson that I learned as well, which I think you hinted at as well, which is like, when you do go ask people for help, like show what you've tried. Because and I still remember, like, this was, I think, the best lesson that I learned in all of university. I don't remember anything that I learned in university, but I do remember one conversation with a professor that I had in statics. And I remember coming to his office, asking him a question about a problem set that I was working on. And he got mad at me. He's like, you didn't even try. Like, you will next time you come into my office, you will tell me exactly what you did to attempt to solve this problem, and then we can have a conversation. I remember leaving his office and I'm like, he's so mean. Mean old man. But like, it's the one lesson that had stayed with me for the longest time in my life, because I always think back to him. I'm like, you have to like show the people that you're asking for help that you've at least attempted, so that they know what you've tried, that they know that you're making an effort, because otherwise no one likes someone who doesn't make an effort.
Just give me the answer. It's like, okay. It's the two things. One is like showing them that you try, and the other is like explaining because sometimes people don't know what you're working on. So if you say something like, oh, how do I connect this thing? Like, wait, what thing to what thing? And then sometimes like the same word means different thing for different people. Like, okay, you are talking about this system or that system? Like, so if you explain what you try, explain the context, explain what you're trying to do, then sometimes it is so much easier for the person helping you to just, okay, it's this thing or that thing.
Yeah, exactly. I remember I once posted a question for the OTel operator folks. I was trying to get like a demo working, and I was following like a thing in someone's blog post. So I'm like, okay, these are all the things that I tried. These are like, this is the version of like the operator that I use, and the version of Cert Manager, and blah, 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 blah. And then they're like, oh, what's the version of this other component they use? And I'm like, oh, it's this. And they're like, yeah, that's not gonna work. But they were super polite about it. But like, being forthcoming and giving that information. And I in a lot of ways, like if you've ever worked in QA, I think it trains that part of your brain, right? Because you're used to filing bugs. So you can't file a bug that says it doesn't work. It's like when my mom would call me desperate, like trying to get her phone to work. It's not working. I'm like, what's not working? You have to give me more information.
You're not helping me. Why you can't? Like, I'm trying. And even like
parent tech support.
Even like different experiences are gonna like solve the same problem a different way. I remember one time that I had an escalation, and it was actually 2 escalations at the same time by the same customer, but coming from different teams. So I was and each one was a completely like different thing, and I was trying to find out if they were like related or not. It was like a hell of an escalation. And then once I finished, I was like, okay, I think that was like a really interesting one. So I actually presented to my team, and I was like, I'm gonna go over with you with the information that I had at the time, and then all of you are gonna have to, because that was kind of like more a critical one, so I didn't have time to like stop and show to everybody. It was kind of like go 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 kind
Yeah.
of thing. But after
Yeah.
that, I was like, okay, now this is the information that I had. What all of you would have done here? So they would discuss and say, okay, I think we should do this or that. I was like, okay, this is what I did. Now with this information, what is your next step? So it was also a
Yeah.
way of training them on what you would have done, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's so great. That's so great. So you turn like, a troubleshooting moment into a teachable
Yeah.
moment for the rest of your team. That's amazing. I want to go back to the
Yeah.
OTel work that you're doing. So I had a question around like, so right now you're a contributor, right, to the node SIG. Are you are there plans for you to like become like an approver or maintainer in that SIG?
Yeah, so I think that is part of my goal. And even because I'm already like reviewing PRs, and I even try to like
Yeah,
put comments and approve. But I even
yeah,
joke like last week with them, I was like, I am approving, but it doesn't really count because someone
yeah.
else has to come and actually approve for real. But like, at least I'm trying to help you, because when I find things, the person is already fixing. So one time that one of them come, at least it is helpful, I hope. So, and then one of them actually comment like, oh yeah, please continue doing this because it helps when we get you to be an approver. So
Yeah,
hopefully that
yeah, that's
that
awesome.
can be in a near future. And I'm swimming maintainer with something that takes definitely
Yeah,
a
yeah,
longer
yeah.
time.
I've got my fingers crossed for you. I know it's gonna happen. Yeah, and do you know what the process is for like moving into like an approver role? Like,
So there is a few
has anyone?
criteria. So for
Yeah.
example, I think for approver has to be working on the area for at least a month, had several
Mm,
meaningful contributions and things like that. So I think I'm just completing a month now.
cool.
So
Oh wow, has it? It's only been a month,
so I joined.
or I guess a little more than a month,
Yeah,
right?
it's because like I joined Grafana first week of
Yeah.
March, but then we had like the onboarding like in person, like the second week, and then the third week working like some internal stuff. So when I
Yeah.
actually started contributing to like OTel was about my third, fourth week. So it would be like almost a month
Oh
now.
wow. Wow, that's awesome. And so like hit the ground running. That's
Yeah.
so great. So great. That's so exciting. Yeah. So I mean, this shows to anyone who wants to get on that path towards OTel approver, like it's doable.
Yeah,
It's
pick
not
pick
scary. It's just
your language, your area, not just SDK. Of course, there is a lot of
yeah.
other project there, and then usually they have the tag for good for first issue, or like for grabs or things like that. So look for those
Yeah,
ones
yeah.
that are an easier entrance for you, and then just started sending, and don't be afraid. Usually the first PR is gonna have a lot of comments, because it's gonna
Yep.
people don't always read like the how to contribute or like the readme, so the format is not always like the right thing for the PR and things like that. So don't be afraid. Your first PR, imagine, is gonna be tons of comments, then the second one a little less, the third one a little less, and then things will be easier with time.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice, and for people to know what to expect. And the other thing that I will mention is like everyone is so polite in their PRs. Like no one is a jerk so far. Like of all the various PRs that I've made on OTel, no one has been a jerk. Everyone has always very thoughtful comments, and I'm always impressed by like how people really take the time
Hmm.
to like review your stuff properly, which I really appreciate because I'm like honestly I'm like it might be like part of someone's job, but still like to put the to be thoughtful and put in the effort.
Yeah.
I think like it makes me feel a lot more at ease and makes me feel welcome.
Yeah. And it shows the value, people are valuing you as well, right? Because people
Mm,
want people
mhm.
contributing. So if you just mistreat people, you're not welcoming them to actually join it. So
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
got.
I think that's why. Oh, sorry.
No, I
Go
was gonna
ahead.
say I felt like very lucky with the every people that I interacted with. They were always really nice.
That's so great. And I was gonna say, I think that's why OpenTelemetry I think has the highest project contribution in CNCF behind Kubernetes. So, yay! Which makes me super excited. And just going back to a point that you made earlier on like the types of things to contribute. Like I think people who are contributing to open source for the first time can be so scared to contribute
Yeah.
anything or to like join a SIG meeting and speak up. And it's so like if you're yeah, I find even if I know what I'm talking about, if I'm like in a group of people that I don't necessarily know, it can be like really hard to speak
Mm-hmm.
up. So I think even just joining the meetings and just getting used to the people
Yeah.
around.
Join just listening in, like the ones that I join. A lot of people are just actually quiet, just listening
Mm-hmm.
in. So start with this, though, so you can have like a feel of what it is. It's gonna be like case by case, of course. Like my second week, I was opening a bunch of can of worm with my questions. Like, sorry everybody, but I had to ask.
Sorry, not
Yeah, kind
sorry.
of thing. But again, this is after like almost 15 years working on the on this world. So and of course it comes with experience, with time, knowing how to ask a questions. Again,
Yeah.
also if I'm asking something, I'm always trying to be respectful, polite, explain the context of the things that I'm trying to do as well. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? We talk about like people not being jerks when they answer questions, but you can't be a jerk when you
Yeah.
ask a question too, because otherwise no one's going to want to talk to
Yeah,
you.
like
So
I created this PR my way. I'm not changing. Like,
that's like, buddy, don't want you. Yeah, and I think that once people start interacting with you more and more, and you're interacting with them, they, you kind of come to this realization of like, oh yeah, we're all humans here. We're just trying to do our best and make this project great.
yeah,
And I think that's what's really easy to forget sometimes is like there are humans behind those avatars on GitHub.
yeah. And I think I also got really lucky with this job that Grafana was like, oh no, your focus is to work on OpenTelemetry. So my day to
Yeah,
day is to work on the community and help something that is going to help everybody, not just
yeah,
Grafana. So I think
yeah.
that was definitely something that drove me to come.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's so nice too because like open source doesn't happen without like the people who put in the time. And
Yeah.
I mean, if you're like doing open source on the side, like that is a lot of
Yeah.
work. And I know some people do
Hmm.
that. But it's nice to work at a company where like they're committed to that open source project.
Yeah.
And other companies in the area in the same industry are also committed to the open source project so that it's not like just one main just one main organization as contributor. And I think like I think it speaks volumes more so than a company saying like we are contributors of open source to actually have dedicated teams that do
Yeah.
open source. And I think that speaks volumes. And like I'm fortunate as well. Like I would say most of my work is spent in open telemetry, and I'm very grateful for it. And as you were saying, you're getting to spend most of your time in open telemetry, and it's great because that's what helps make the community better.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we are coming up on time. So before we wrap up, do you have any words of wisdom or hot takes that you want to share with people? It can be about anything, can be related to any of the topics we discussed today. Your choice.
Well, I guess I can do like a recap of some of the things. It's just don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be afraid to learn because that is how you grow your career, your knowledge, grow experiences. You're gonna also meet a lot of different people, different cultures when you do that as well. And that is also something always great to just open your mind to see what is out there.
Yeah, and that's such an excellent point. Like, especially, and I think companies more and more are becoming like very, very global. But open source, you have no choice. It is extremely global, and it's very interesting when you get to like meet the different folks, the different cultures, and I think it makes us better humans to be aware of and interact and like learn to respect these different cultures and points of view.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's amazing advice. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Marylia, for geeking out with me today. Y'all don't forget to subscribe and be sure to check out the show notes for additional resources and to connect with us and our guests on social media. Until next time,
Peace out and geek out.
Geeking Out is hosted and produced by me, Adriana Vilela. I also compose and perform the theme music on my trusty clarinet. Geeking Out is also produced by my daughter, Hannah Maxwell, who incidentally designed all of the cool graphics. Be sure to follow us on all the socials by going to bento.me/geekingout.